Hello, good morning, and welcome to Football League World TV. This morning, we're going to be kicking off the day with the Swindon Town Fans Voice Show, looking ahead to the 2022-23 League Two campaign from a Robins perspective. I'm your host, Marcus Alley, and joining me is Ben Nicholls from the Fools Rush In podcast. How are you doing this morning, Ben?
I'm very well, Marcus. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to the show.
Yeah, definitely should be a good one. Just before we get into it, I'm going to ask you to please do get involved in the comment section. Should be able to pose some of your questions to Ben. If you would be so kind to drop a like on the video and support us by hitting the subscribe button. As you can see, we've just edged towards and achieved a significant milestone on the channel. So looking forward to building from that. But without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to begin this morning with something of a brief reflection on the 2021-22 campaign. Now, if you cast yourself back to this time last year, Ben, I'm sure you were potentially feeling a little bit more nervous and anxious going into the League Two season after a very less than ideal summer with a lot of concerns off the pitch. How did you assess Clem Morfuni's first season as owner of the club? Did it exceed your expectations, given the squad building definitely wasn't ideal?
Absolutely. I think this time last year we were still nervous whether we'd have a club. I think the club was just being taken over or being announced right about now through the courts. It had been a summer of turmoil. The club was being run down by the previous owner. Bills hadn't been paid. We hadn't paid rent for 18 months, tax for that same amount of time as well. Players weren't getting paid, staff weren't getting paid, and the debts were mounting. And it was up to the judge decision whether the club actually gets sold and lives or doesn't, and we die. Luckily, it went in our favour. I would just be happy to exist. This time last year, I fully accepted a relegation fight, and we'd struggle. But it turned into a season way beyond I would imagine. It was a fantastic season, and probably one of the most enjoyable that I've watched for a long time because it was unexpected.
Obviously ending in a somewhat cruel playoff semi-final penalty shootout defeat. But given the circumstances, as you rightly mentioned, the first season after the pandemic with supporters back in stadiums as well, what was it like to watch the squad that cobbled together and the football that they played last season?
Yeah, it was all slapped together all in the last minute because 2 weeks prior to the season, we didn't have anything. No coaching staff, 5 contracted players, nothing. But yeah, we brought Ben Garner in, who is a football advocate. He believes in a certain style and a certain fashion, which is pretty much total football, very attacking as well. And he brought in players to suit that. I think our director of football at the time, Ben Shawley, did an absolute fantastic job in recruiting in the last minute and the players we had. I think he had some lined up when the takeover would have been completed, but to assign players like Johnny Williams was, for the state that we're in, to bring someone like that, he's off to the World Cup this year, So it's it was a few stunning signatures, as well as working within a transfer embargo because we were limited on wages and what year contracts we could give players. We had sort of a lower league, sort of like bottom 5 budget, and it was outstanding, and the football was brilliant to watch. It was attacking, and the momentum of actually surviving, of just knowing that we had a club to support, and the feel-good factor spilled out onto the pitch, and it spilled onto the players, and we packed the county ground, we packed the away ends, we made a lot of noise, and that drove the players on because they didn't have a pre-season, so they were running on adrenaline, really. And we started the season incredibly well. And it spurred us on to a really, really good season, and not quite the fairy tale ending that it probably deserved, but it still was pretty special.
Absolutely. So a word on Ben Garner then, obviously departed at the end of the season, just ahead of pre-season for Charlton Athletic. What was your initial reaction to the news? It did kind of drag on and seem inevitable for a couple of weeks prior. What was your initial reaction to the news?
Well, the news actually broke halfway through doing a pod that there was interest from the Charlton local press. I was doing my pod Fools Rush In, and it just knocked all of us for 6 because At the time, we were expecting just to push on really from this season with the players that we'd got. We thought we'd just add, a little bit more quality. We'd spend the money and push on for a top 3 place next season. We didn't. We saw Ben Garner as part of a project, and that he was here to stay for a long, long term. He wasn't a big, glitzy name. He'd come from the sort of academies and the backbenches of the Premier League. He'd worked with quite a few managers, but his first stint at managing at Bristol Rovers was a failure, really. I think Joe Barton said that if he was a doctor, he'd be struck off for because he was just so bad for incompetence. I think he called it like that. But so he didn't have a very good start. But at Swindon, it just took off, and it was a shock. It was a shock. It took a long time to conclude as well, which was a big hindrance because we were stagnant in our pre-season. We couldn't do anything till we knew where we stood. And it took a long time to announce him. So we started once again behind the 8 ball, behind everyone else, which was disappointing. But sometimes what happens when you get so close to promotion and you fail cruelly in a way, you're open to have your best players picked up, and it's kind of what happened. But it happened with Ben Garner, which is a shame. But we move on and we rebuild. It's football.
Not ideal preparation necessarily for going into this season, but we're going to touch on the new era in the next section. So Scott Lindsey has stepped into the dugout and replaced Ben Garner, having been the club's assistant manager last season. It's his first permanent managerial role in the EFL. What do you make of it? Do you think he's ready for the step up?
He speaks very, very well. It's his second stint at the club. He was at Swindon in season 14-15 in our League One playoff campaign. He was working as one of the coaches back then, and worked a lot with the youth. So he knows the club very well. He's very close to the club. Very close to his heart, which I think is part of the reason why he chose to turn down Charlton to take on the head honcho role at Swindon. He speaks incredibly well. He realizes where we were weak, where we were short last season, which I feel he's addressed this season. He says he actually wants to be more attacking than we were last year. Now, last season we scored 92 goals, league and cup. So we were quite attacking last season. But he realizes at home we struggled a little bit, which cost us automatic promotion. I think in February we still only won 3 games at home. And he says, we need to move the ball quicker in the final third. He's got his own ideas and the tactics. We're going to revert back to the 3-5-2. He's popular with the players. I think he's a very good reason why our contracted players have decided to hang around and push on next season. He did a very good job at Forest Green. He's got an excellent reputation as a coach. So I think it has potential. It's the potential, because we don't know. He's an unknown entity, really, but he has the potential to be an inspired decision, and I hope he is. We thought we'd pick up another academy coach. There's some fans that were disappointed because he's what we know, and that's obviously fans like something shiny and new. But it could be an inspired decision, and let's hope so.
So where do you sort of lean on that side of the debate? If you were in charge, would you have been looking for someone with a bit more League Two experience, or are you happy to go with someone that knows the group at his disposal already?
I'm quite happy someone to knows the group. He knows the players. He knows how to make them tick. For players like Harry McCurdy, and especially who's failed at a lot of all his previous, gone throughout most of his career, just disappointing. He's such a talented player, and he needs the right sort of manager that knows how to make him tick, to look after him, really, because he's the type of character that he is. And I think that Harry will perform for him next season, as long as he stays here beyond September the 1st. He knows the players. He knows what was successful last year, and I think it's a good decision. Really, at the end of the day, I think it's a good one.
So in spite of the Ben Garner saga, Swindon have still been very busy in the transfer market, and we're going to touch on that next. So 13 new signings have come in the door in this summer transfer window. Just to rattle them off quickly, it's Angus MacDonald, Tommy Adeloye, Keane Harries, Reece Devine, Tyree Shea, Jacob Wakeling, Oscar Massey, Ronan Darcy, Seydou Khan, Remy Al, Hutton, Tom Clayton, Kieran Brennan, and Sol Bryn. As a whole, what do you make of that? Obviously, there were some players leaving towards the end of their contracts, a lot
Yeah,
of very youthful additions as well.
yeah.
Players with potential high sell-on value and definitely the best years ahead of them in their careers.
Mm.
Heading into the first game on Saturday, are you content with how the squad's looking and how the business has played out?
Yeah, I think for the first time in many, many years, the Swindon squad is actually looking quite complete because we've not actually lost that many. I think, barring the loans, I think there's only about 5 players that were offered contracts that, have not taken that up option and gone elsewhere, and we've not sold any contracted players. So now we've got a decent depth to the squad that we didn't have before. As I mentioned earlier with Ben Nicholls, he's now moved on. And we've now got a technical director called Alessandra Di Michele, who worked as the same sort of role at Wigan and recruited a lot of their players that helped them spur on promotion last season. So I think that's quite a good move. We've gone through data recruitment. So it's data driven, a lot of our signings that have been made. And we're going for more the Peterborough role, the sort of Peterborough Brentford model of signing young, talented players who are going to have a high resale value, making the club self-sustainable through that, and just building the club through there. So we've still got some of the established that we've got, your Harry McCurdy's, Louis Reeds, your Johnny Williams, or them sort of players. They're still here, and we've added some youthful players into that with a little bit of experience into there. A lot of them are Premier League Academy graduates who have been on loan to other clubs. Some that we've actually paid for. Tom Clayton as well, Liverpool under-23 captain, Scottish under-21 international, and we paid good money for him as well. So he's quite a good addition. Seydou Khan as well from Chesterfield to 26. Fantastic. I think Oxford also in the running to get him. So to get him an actual proper box-to-box number 8, something that we didn't have at all last season. So that adds an extra dimension to something that we were a little bit short of, and less loans as well, which cost us badly as well. I think only 2 of them are loans out of the 13 players that we signed. And what crippled us last season is they all got recalled in January, and we dipped in form because of that. And we had to find a new way of playing and new loans, to restructure the side. So that's a good move as well. I'm quite happy. I think we still need a gun striker. I still think we need a proper number 9. We did sign Tommy Adeloye from Ayr, who did very well in the Scottish Championship last year. A very well liked striker, but I still think we need that top sort of marquee type number 9 if we're going to really set our strength and maybe even push top 3 next season. We need someone to score sort of like 20, 25 goals to work with McCurdy up front. But other than that, I think we're pretty set.
So one player that's gone against the grain a little in that recruitment and joins the squad as the 3rd oldest player in it is Angus MacDonald, coming in from Rotherham United. Only Ben Gladwin and Matteo Baudry sort of older in years that MacDonald into the squad. Obviously a player that was involved a tiny bit really in Rotherham United's League One automatic promotion last season, but did make 39 championship appearances in 2020-21. So clearly a player that's potentially going to be a senior head in the dressing room. How do you rate that addition?
A very good addition. It's as I say, the back is quite youthful. Other than Matteo Baudry, who is coming to the back end of his career. He's in his mid-30s now, and he's probably not going to play much more than 20 to 25 games, especially with his injury record. Last season, we lacked a leader, we had Dion Conroy, but he's not very vocal. He just he's been there because he sort of led by example, and he was at the club for quite a long time, which made him captain. But this one, he's a natural leader. I believe he didn't play so much last season because he was ill more than anything. He was quite poorly for quite a lot of the season, which he's all right now. He's back. I think it's for a League Two. It's a fantastic signing. And you say he's one of the oldest, makes him sound like he's 32. He's 29, so he's still in his 20s. So he's actually, as a central defender, coming to the peak of his powers. He's got about 100 championship caps behind him. So it's a bit of a coup that we've got him. And we conceded a lot of goals last season, and I think that's something that we've addressed with the strength and the depth, the quality that we've got. It's all positive on that front.
Yeah, going to be an exciting one to see how he settles in. As you mentioned, one signing coming in from Liverpool, Tom Clayton, another player who's joined from a high-profile club in Manchester United. Obviously, a lot of experience as well in Premier League 2 in the last couple of seasons is Reece Devine, a 20-year-old left-back. Did enjoy loan spells at Walsall and St Johnstone last season. What do you make of this addition? Obviously, a little bit of League 2 experience at the back of the last term as well.
Devine, he didn't have a great time at Walsall. I think he played about 8 games and was injured quite a lot of the time, and and Walsall fans didn't quite warm to him. However, he was at St Johnstone previously earlier in the season, and he did quite well there. The feedback from the St Johnstone fans that he did all right. He played a bit of European football as well, played in Europa, which was quite good. So I think the club's got high hopes for him. I don't think he's an instant starter. I think at 20 years old, he's someone that we're going to sort of be a squad player and introduce a little bit. I think Shade might get the nod ahead of him as left wing back. But he's another one, I think, is the potential of a decent sell-on value. I think the club are quite keen on him and to build him up as a player. He's certainly got a decent pedigree, as a lot of the youngsters that we've got in. I'm quite excited to see what he can do.
So plenty of optimism building ahead of the new season due to the Robins transfer business. We're going to be looking into some of the departures next. So as you touched on, looking into who Angus MacDonald is potentially replacing in the back line. Dion Conroy left the club at the end of his contract last season, has joined Crawley, who have been making some eye-catching additions this summer. Is that a big loss? You mentioned maybe he was captain for some other reasons other than his leadership qualities. Where do you stand on that one?
He was a great servant for the club. He'd been with us for about 6-7 years. He was a good ball-playing midfielder. He'd suffered some horrific injuries at the time. He'd done both ACLs in his time at the club, which really hindered him. He was someone who, when he joined us from Chelsea, potentially play a lot higher level than he did, but he had a couple of seasons written off really because of it. He had sort of up and down time with the fans. He got a lot of stick at time, and then he was also held as one of our best players and others. It was a choice of the club not to renew his contract. I think it was time for him to move on and try something else. He did finish quite strongly his time at Swindon. He got the goal that beat Oldham. So John Sheridan, his former boss, who gave him a real hard time. That was quite good for him and a bit of a send-off for him. So I wish Dion all the best at Crawley. I hope that his career now is injury-free and all those nightmares that he's had behind him have gone now. And I hope he really does kick on at Crawley and does well. And he seems like a nice enough bloke. But I think his time at Swindon was up.
Also, 3 players moving on to sort of reunite with Ben Garner, if you like, at Charlton. Important to mention, as you have previously, that none of them were under contract at Swindon. So it's not like, the club have been sort of cashed in on these players. It was a case of the 3 individuals opting to move on to a higher level. Obviously, Mandela Egbo coming in midway through last season was probably one of the better performing players in his position in League 2 for the second half of the season. Then Joe Wallacott making the team of the season in the 4th tier, moving to the Addicts, and eventually Jack Payne after quite a long sort of uncertainty over where his future lay heading into this season. What do you make of those 3 exits? If you could pick one to maybe take back, who would it be?
If I took one back, of course, it'd be Jack Payne because he's a bit of a special talent. I think he'll be a firm favourite at Charlton. He's far too good for League Two level. We fought tooth and nail to keep him. There was a bit of a tug of war. He was happy and he was settled at the club. However, I've seen the lure of a bigger club, and League One was too much. To be honest to him, he earned his loyalty badge last summer when he wasn't getting paid. I'd expect him to be on the first out the door out for relegation of League One when the club was an absolute mess. But he decided to be one of the 5 players that sort of stuck at it and and came last season. And yeah, he was. I'm gobsmacked he didn't make team this season because he was a player that works tirelessly. He's got such an engine on him. He works so hard. He makes opportunities happen. He scores goals. He does the lot really. And he's an all action player, and he's going to be a loss. We won't replace him. We can't replace someone like that at this level, which is why we've gone to strengthen in other areas that we were weaker at. That's the only way you can do that, really. If out of all of them, obviously you take Jack Payne back because he's more of a top end League One, even lower league Championship player. He was an outstanding talent, and we fought tooth and nail to keep him. We offered him a big fat contract, broke our budget to try and hold on to him, but it wasn't enough, I'm afraid. So enjoy him.
And a word on Egbo and Wollacott, potentially areas that are more replaceable, at least. Yeah.
Well, Egbo, you're right a lot. We've got Tyrese Shade, who's basically a like for like for Egbo. Fantastic attacking wing back. I think Egbo's best position. Lots of pace. Loves to take on a fullback. Very attack minded. He's really, really good. Again, fantastic pedigree. Worked with Ben Garner at Crystal Palace when he was there. To get on really, really well. I think they're actually quite close friends as well, which is why he took him straight away. He had a spell at Borussia Mönchengladbach in Germany. Played a little bit for the first team, but mainly for the B team. Then he went off to New York Red Bulls. Was quite successful there. He was actually offered an extension there, but he wanted to move back to Europe. And he was only purely training at Swindon last season. He's a player, again, is way beyond League Two level. He should be there. But Swindon suffered quite a lot of injuries towards the back end of last season, now March. And he was just training with us whilst looking for another club. And Ben says, well, do you fancy, just signing on to the end of the season, just helping us out because we're a bit short of players. And luckily he did. And an instant straight away, the first game, even though he'd not played for like 4 months, you could tell how the quality he was, an instant success for the fans. And he's another one that you'll quite like because he's a really, really, really free flowing attacking fullback and bags ability. He can defend as well as he can attack. And he's a good character as well. He's quite a positive player around the building and he's popular. And he loves a bit of Love Island if you watch his tweets as well. But yeah, he's a good player. The other one, Wollacott. Wollacott actually is a bit surprised to me. I thought he'd leave because basically Garner instigated his move because they're off to the World Cup and they're not too happy with him. He was playing at a 4th division club. And he's basically, I think they've said to him, if they want to remain in the Garden or Black is number 1, then he needs to not play for a 4th division club anymore. So I think he was moving on, but he lost his place out towards the back end of the season. He through indifferent performances after a strong start to the season. So which I'm surprised Garner took him with him. But again, he made team of the season largely for the first half performance of the season. He was unbelievable. Great shot stopper. Really, really good with the ball at his feet. He works with Garner's total football. You need a sweeper keeper, and he can pick a pass as well as some sweepers. So he's pretty good with the ball at his feet, and he's a good shot stopper. Probably needs to work a little bit on his domination of the box and crosses and when to come and when not to. But I think that will come with games. He's not actually that experienced in the Football League, so he has potential there to come a lot better in time. Whether he'll just walk into your number 1, I hope so. I think so. I hope he goes and has a great World Cup next year or this year. But yeah, no, he's a solid addition to your team.
Okay, so that concludes our roundup of Swindon Town's transfer business this summer. And next up, we're going to be looking at the fixture list. So just honing in on the opening section for the Robins, the first 6 fixtures in League Two, some definitely winnable, some a little bit harder. I just wanted to get a gauge for how you're feeling going into them and an idea of a points total that you might have in mind. Just to rattle them off, the opening 6, it starts with Harrogate Town away, Salford City at home, Carlisle United away, Leyton Orient at home, Rochdale at home, and then ending it with New Boys Stockport County away. How do you feel about that sort of little run to begin the campaign?
It's a mixed bag, really, isn't it? As you say, I quite like playing the bigger boys first, or the top end player teams first, because they've not got themselves into a bit of the rhythm as yet. You know, form dictates, so you much rather play a better team up front where they've not really found themselves and found their feet, and they're still finding out about each other, because in League Two there's lots of changes to the squad. That rather than March when they're in full swing and won about 6-7 games on the spin and they're doing quite well. So I'm quite happy to play some of these teams nice and early. I'm quite positive. I think at the 6 games, if you're looking at sort of about 20 points or so, I think that's quite a good solid 15 to 20. It's quite a solid start. I think he's got quite a good game to start with to get off to Harrogate, who I've tipped to go down this season, unfortunately for them. I think we can get off to the front foot and then get the season underway. I do have some reservations, as in because the squad is quite young and they are still finding each other, and pre-season has been a little bit indifferent. So I don't think we'll hit the strap straight away, but I'm still quite positive we can start the season on the front foot.
Okay, yeah, definitely going to be an exciting one. Just got a comment in from Chris Welch. He says he thinks that Swindon will be up there again, in his opinion. Obviously, yeah, a lot of change at the club, but hoping that continuity with Scott Lindsey in the dugout is going to stand them in good stead. Just to follow on from that one straight away then, Ben, and get your league table prediction in terms of Swindon. You mentioned that you're quite positive ahead of the new season and the business that's being conducted. If you were to pinpoint one specific place in the table, where would it be?
I think it's going to be 6th or 7th again. I think we're quite a young squad, so there's going to be inconsistencies there. We're going to go for little spells. There's going to be little dips. You're going to get that with young players. I think it's up to the senior players to pull them through that. I think the squad is a little bit better, but I think some other teams are quite strong at the top. You know, your teams like your Stockports, who go into the League Two season with a team capable of doing quite well in League Two, and they'll sprinkle a little bit more for extra players on that. Bradford as well will be very, very, very strong. Mansfield are going to be strong. The actual quality, I think, has got risen a little bit. So I think Swindon though they have lost important players, I think they've improved in other areas and got better through that way. I think we shall finish in the playoffs, sort of 6th or 7th. Again, I don't like the playoffs because they're painful, as you well know. But I think it's going to be it again for Swindon Town, and hopefully the experience of last season's pain will drive them to success this year, because it happens from time to time. So fingers crossed.
So there we have it. Ben Nicholls from Fools Rush In podcast is predicting a lower end playoff finish for Swindon Town in League Two this season. So that concludes this morning's show on Football League World TV. Just to let you know what's coming up on the channel throughout the rest of the day. We've got 3 more shows for you at 11 a.m. It's the Sheffield United Fans Voice show. Alfie Burns will be hosting that, and he's joined by Owen Wise. Then at 12:30, we've got the Burnley Fans Voice. That's Toby Wilding, and he's going to be joined by Dan from Turfmoor House. And then finally at 2:30, we've got the Preston Fans Voice. That'll be hosted by Ben Wignall, and he's going to be joined by Sam Whedon. So all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for joining me, Ben. Do check out Fools Rush In on YouTube and on podcast platforms. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.